What happens when a national ethos turns into a financial pressure cooker? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that's practically hardwired into our cultural DNA. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the origins behind the American dream. We'll explore how this whole concept started, what it was originally meant to be, and how that initial promise of prosperity kind of morphed into the exhausting reality so many of us feel today. Let's get into it.
For generations, the formula was basically guaranteed, right? Work hard, buy a home, raise a family, boom, you made it. But today, well, look past the perfectly manicured lawns and the targeted ads on your feed, and you find a very different America. With crushing debt and ever-increasing work hours, we really have to ask ourselves, has the dream itself just become way too expensive to afford?
Chapter 1. The Birth of the Dream.
All right, let's dive right into the history. The American dream didn't just magically appear out of nowhere. Back in the early 1900s, immigrants were arriving with almost nothing, literally building businesses on pure, raw ambition. But the real game changer? That was 1945. The post-World War II era sparked this absolutely massive economic explosion. We're talking factories pivoting from building tanks to churning out televisions. Millions of people rode that wave straight into the middle class, building the sprawling suburban neighborhoods we all recognize today.
And it was during this post-war era that the dream really crystallized into a very specific, almost universal checklist. You know the one: a house, a car in the garage, a stable job, a family. And capping it all off, financial security. The crazy part? For a mid-century American, this wasn't some unattainable marketing fantasy. It was an incredibly achievable reality. The origins of the dream were deeply rooted in these tangible, reachable milestones.
But hold on. To truly understand these origins, we absolutely have to look at the whole picture here. This post-war prosperity, it was never distributed equally. Things like redlining, segregation, and highly unequal access to the GI Bill meant that entire communities were effectively locked out of the boom. So while the foundation of the dream existed, your actual access to it depended heavily on your zip code and, well, who you were.
Chapter 2. The Changing Math.
So the crucial point here is that for decades, the formula was practically gospel. Get a degree, find a solid career, and everything falls into place. But today, the fundamental math is just completely broken. It's not that young adults today are less ambitious. Not at all. The economic gravity has simply shifted underneath us. The costs of housing, higher education, and healthcare have skyrocketed, leaving stagnant wages completely in the dust. Milestones that used to take just a few years of saving now literally require decades of debt. And because our paychecks simply couldn't stretch to cover those foundational pillars anymore, we had to find a bridge. The result of that? We totally normalized living on borrowed time and borrowed money. Mortgages, massive student loans, rolling credit card balances month to month. Carrying a mountain of debt transformed from being a huge financial red flag into, well, standard operation procedure for millions of us. This intense reliance on debt created this bizarre illusion of modern wealth. Think about it. You could have the luxury car sitting in the driveway and the framed degree hanging on the wall, but that often masks a suffocating reality of monthly minimum payments. It's entirely possible to look wildly successful to the outside world while being completely financially trapped behind closed doors. Chapter 3. The Consumer Trap. As America evolves into a hyper-consumer economy, that original simple dream was essentially hijacked. Today, we are constantly fed images of what success is supposed to look like, and social media weaponize this. You aren't just trying to keep up with the Joneses next door anymore, you're competing with millions of strangers online. So the cycle locks in. We want more, we spend more, we borrow more. And to afford it all, we just have to work more. And because we absolutely have to fund this relentless cycle, our relationship with work has seriously warped. Technology completely erased the boundary between the office and the living room. I mean, your boss literally lives in your pocket now. We're caught in this ultimate modern contradiction, working constantly just to afford our lives, leaving us with absolutely zero time to actually live them. Chapter 4. The Fragile Middle Class. The middle class used to be the absolute bedrock of security. But today, for the millions of people living paycheck to paycheck, it feels a lot more like walking a tightrope. See, if you have true wealth, an unexpected expense is really just an annoyance. But if you're trapped in that debt cycle we just talked about, a sudden medical emergency, a layoff, or even just a blown transmission can turn a regular Tuesday into a total financial collapse. The original dream was about security, the simple ability to survive a bad month. Which brings us to a somewhat uncomfortable truth about modern success. We love to celebrate individual grit to creativity and elbow grease in this country. And yes, absolutely, hard work matters. But the starting blocks are highly staggered. Inherited wealth, zip codes, school districts, and frankly, just sheer luck act as massive multipliers. Two people can run the exact same race, put in the exact same amount of effort, and cross completely different financial finish lines based entirely on where they started.
Chapter 5, Redefining the American Dream. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it's not that the American dream is dead. Actually, scratch that. It just needs a major software update. We have to pivot away from this exhausting cycle of just looking rich and return to the roots of the dream, which was always about actual freedom. That means prioritizing financial independence over shiny status symbols, less debt, more free time with family, a real work-life balance. Success really shouldn't be measured by the sheer volume of stuff you own, but by the amount of your own time you actually control.
As we look forward and redefine what success actually means today, those mid-century origins remind us that the dream was always fueled by possibility. But here's the thing, a dream only survives if people actually believe they have a realistic shot at it. So the ultimate question for us isn't whether opportunity still exists out there, but who gets to access it. Does a viable path forward exist for everyone, or just the lucky few? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to think on that.